Welcome everybody. I would like to welcome Dr. Bram Goberts, Chief Operating Officer, Deputy Director General Research, Sustainable Production Systems and Integrated Programs, and Director of the Integrated Development Program for a welcome message. Dr. Bram Goberts, the floor is yours.
Well, and I will not take a lot of time. Good morning, everybody, and happy to see over close to 70 people now connected. It is my pleasure and honor to present Hom for a brown bag. It's I hope you all have your own brown bag or your tea, your coffee, whatever you want to enjoy during this seminar. So thank you for joining us here today. Hom, many of you know, others not. He's a gender specialist, and he will bring together here some reflections on gender dynamics of wheat management on the conservation agriculture, insights from the eastern Indo-Gangetic plains of South Asia. And Hom is a social scientist working as a leader for the gender and social inclusion research team at CIMMYT. He's leading that chapter within the IDP with a fantastic team of co-colleagues. For the last 2 decades, Hom is active in research for development on gender and social inclusion in agriculture, climate change, food and nutrition security, labor migration, and small farmers' well-being. He has an undergraduate degree in agriculture obtained from Nepal, MSc and a PhD in social sciences with a disciplinary orientation on sociology and anthropology, and hold your breath from which university? Of course, Wageningen University in the Netherlands. Before joining CIMMYT, he thought he was a teacher at the University of Winnipeg and worked as a program manager at the International Cooperation site in Canada. So, Hom, the floor is all yours, and we are very excited that you took the brave decision to be the first one to give a CIMMYT scientist seminar. So, over to you.
Okay, thank you, Bram, and welcome everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are connecting from. Let me share my screen, and I have some, I have some slides to share with you. Okay. So I hope everybody is able to see my my slide or my screen where I have put up the slide. So I will be, as Bram mentioned, I'll be presenting some insights that we gathered from the eastern Indo-Gangetic plains of South Asia in regards to some gender dynamics within gender dynamics of weed management under conservation agriculture. So in this respect, I'll be talking about some background information of why we were interested in doing this research, some of the objectives, research questions, methods, regular things, and some of the insight that we have received or we have observed in the field, and some final remarks. And at the end of the session, we'll have some Q&A for any attendees if you have any questions in regard to this study. Okay, talking about little bit background of this research, as many of us know that conservation ag is a crop management practice with the principle of doing minimum soil disturbance, retaining the crop residues on farm, and diversifying crops or crop rotation for crop diversification. So with these three principles, the basic idea is to conserve resources and do less harm to the mother nature, and while at the same time produce food that we need from the field. And in South Asia, especially in the Indo-Gangetic plains, over 5 million farmers are practicing this conservation ag in ballpark number. So this is quite important for many farmers, large farmers, small farmers, and there are evidences in research that it has time-saving, cost-saving benefits, but still there are like the uptake, the adoption of conservation agriculture-based sustainable intensification, especially in the Eastern Gangetic plains, is quite limited. And another justification for the study is that zero tillage technology, which is one of the promoted technology under CA package, and it has a potential to change the weed management practice, because if we do less or no tillage, there is definitely changes in the weed infestation, weed emergence, morphology, all those things. And this is not like the first time we are doing, like scientists have been working a lot in this field, especially thinking about like on the benefits of yield benefits, cost, time, but mostly we found our literature review found that mostly they are based on the trials and the plot level analysis. And we are interested to know what farmers think about and how they are experiencing. It's more on the lived experience of farmers, bringing the farmers, or bringing the human element of conservation ag in the discussion. So with that background, this obviously gives some context of why we are interested in this research, and we want to analyze knowledge, perception, and responsibilities, and any changes of that kind of male and female farmers with respect to weed management practices under CA in that area of Eastern Gangetic plains. In order to satisfy that research objective, we have some research questions. How do weed manage, like weed knowledge and identification skills differ between male and female farmers? Because to manage or to have some sort of understanding on the weed management issue, we thought that the knowledge and whether they identify weed or non-weed plants is important. And we also want to know their experience of using or considering using herbicides under the system, because herbicide, will know a little bit more later that herbicide is one of the main, not the driver, but one of the main practices that farmers are using to control weed. And how do gender roles, responsibilities, and time contribution for weeding change when a household practices conservation ag, when they move from conventional to JT, if there are any changes happening in terms of roles and responsibilities, the intra-household division of labor. And what are the time, cost, and labor implications of various weed management techniques for livelihoods and empowerment? So that are kind of more foresight understanding. We may not have all the insights on the last research question, but we'll see. So I have already talked about the Eastern Gangetic Plain. So if anybody is not aware of where it is a small section in South Asia that covers part of Nepal, the Eastern Terai region of Nepal, Eastern Uttar Pradesh in India, Bihar, West Bengal, and some part of Bangladesh. So that is basically the Eastern Gangetic Plains. And within that, we visited and we collected data from Sunsari district in Nepal. In Bangladesh, we collected data from Rangpur and Rajshahi. And in India, we collected data from Kuch Bihar and Malda in West Bengal and Purnia in Bihar state. So that is basically the research locations we visited and collected information from. How did we collect data? We used, I would say, innovative method at least in the field of agriculture. We collected information, the quantitative, qualitative, and visual data using photo voice. What we did is we, in the last 2019 Rabi season, during the onset of wheat crop, we selected based on certain inclusion criteria, we selected farmers who would help us collecting data using the picture and giving their experiences in the first 5 weeks of seed sowing. So that is the method we use to understand their knowledge, their ideas about weed management, weed identification, and their experience about that. And we also collected information from those farmers, including those farmers who were involved in the photo voice exercise, but we had quite extensive semi-structured qualitative interview sessions across many across the locations. So these are two main methods of data collection we used for this research. And if you see in the picture on the right, a male farmer is taking picture of the interrow, and the idea is he takes the picture and he grabs the weed and put it in the seed that we provided, and our enumerators or the data collector asks some questions some questions around that weed and related to knowledge and identification of those things. In the picture on your left, you can see the qualitative interview session with a female farmer. Let us talk a little bit about what we have observed in the field. Some common weeding techniques under zero tillage. Herbicide has been applied quite extensively, especially in their jetty plots. In the conventional tillage practice, people have been using manual by hand picking or using mechanical weeder, spade. They also use herbicide and interrow hoeing or plowing, especially in the maize crop. And in order to do those weeding, different techniques, there are different labor arrangements exist between family and hired labor. We'll talk about that in the next slides. Talking about weed identification pattern, if you see in this graph, there are some knowledge gap in the identification of presence of a weed in the farm. Like weed is kind of any unwanted guest on the plot is pest or weed in this case. So we wanted to know whether there's difference in the identification of weed between male and female farmers. And you can see out of and this is the incidence of 654 incidences of weeds that are identified, and 28% were identified by both male and female farmers. And if you see further details or at a closer look at the graph, you can see male-female gap or gender gap is largest among the wheat farmers in Nepal, and women in general have identified more weeds than men in India for both maize and wheat crops. So in this one you can see overall 28% in case of 28% identified weeds that were by both male and female farmers, and 37% of incidences there were only male, and 35% of incidences there were only female. So that is the issue, and like as I said, there are some gender gaps in the weed identification. In terms of naming, okay, first they picked up the plants that are not wheat or maize or weeds. Then the next question is whether they can name it. They can say whether it is wheat or not wheat. And the next one was naming them, nominating them, and then compare them with the agronomist, what the local name or the local name of those weeds. And there are some gender differences in the knowledge gap in terms of naming these weeds. And this graph talks about the farmers who could not name the identified weeds. You can see overall the like extreme left bar, overall like 29% of women, they could not identify or they could not name the identified weeds compared to 25% of male. So that is in the overall case. And if you look it further, the higher gap observed with the similar of identification, the naming is also similar, that higher gap in like among the wheat farmers in Nepal. You can see 35% of women could not name the identified weeds compared to 18% of men. And other gender differences we have observed in the like in other knowledge domain. We didn't like there is no difference between spouses in terms of herbicide use and management decisions. I mean, the knowledge about herbicide we found more or less same in both spouses, and there is no identified perception in terms of the responsibility for weeding that has changed under JT compared to weed. Means, I mean, if we ask if there is any responsibility changed, roles and responsibility changed when you change your tillage practice from conservation act to conservation tillage to zero tillage, sorry, conventional tillage to zero tillage, and there is no differences in terms of the perception of changing responsibility. And also, farmers also perceive that there is no reduction of weeds as they change from conventional to zero tillage in India and Nepal. But little more than half of farmers indicated that there is a reduction of like wheat population in the jetty plots. So these are a couple of dynamics around knowledge. Another area that we looked at is the time saving in transition from conventional to zero tillage. And you can see it has, as observed, like in the literature, that it has potential to save time. We found that overall 85% reduction in time came all the way from 51 hours under conventional tillage to 8 hours under zero tillage, based on the time of farmers that they spend weeding, both like in terms of personal weeding or supervising laborers. And that that ranges like in Bangladesh, for example, there is less benefit, like less saving in terms of time compared to India, which is more among, like, if you look at this graph, you could find that overall the time saving has been a lot if the farmers change their practices from conventional to conservation ag. So that is about time. And other results, we observed that like herbicide has been more normalized. It is not the a gift of zero tillage. Farmers have been using herbicides even before this zero tillage was practiced in the region. And they have different perceptions, like farmers, those who have used pesticide for a long time, they are positive about it. They have experienced that it saves time, it saves labor use, and it reduces their farm drudgery. And some of the negative perception about herbicide, which came actually from those who are new to pesticide application, herbicide application, or they haven't used it, and they fear of like unintended damages to the crops. They think that if we apply herbicide, it will damage the crop, and some farmers say that no, it will we cannot feed livestock the herbicide treated weeds or grass. Fair enough. And also we also observe some mindset issues that farmers prefer the practice that they know and they have been using, and they limited information and understanding about pesticide, about the use of herbicide. So this indicates that there is kind of this also like corroborates with the fact that there is a gap in terms of knowledge and understanding about that. And I have some quotation in terms of the labor arrangement and the herbicide use different perception. Like for the farmers who gave their positive feedback about the use, they say laborers for weeding are not available now. The cost of labor is more in manual weeding, which is yeah, we all know that fact. And the negative farmers say that I had sprayed pesticides twice, but my wheat crop also got damaged. We sprayed herbicides, but they were not effective. Yeah, they might have used wrong pesticide, wrong herbicide, or there might be some technical issues. So it shows some sort of knowledge gap among those new users or no users who expresses their negative evaluation on on the herbicide use. Some gender implications we have observed. So how herbicide is impacting in their labor relation and gender relation. We did not find any kind of shifting burden from males to females, especially that are led by zero tillage practice. That has like this is not like new phenomenon, that there is no indication of such shift. And also another important, if not interesting, but important insights that herbicide sprays have become more a male responsibility due to the tank design and weight. So this issue is important, especially when we talk about designing technology, gender responsive designs, and female friendly technologies. So this is, and women support is, women's role is more than to provide the supporting role by like fetching water or hand picking the like reappeared weeds and so on. And there are we also observe that there are intra-household level distribution for weeding, which is influenced by some sociocultural norms and religion, like Muslim. They are like Muslim have a perception or think that women should not go out. Not only in Muslim, but some other communities too, that women should not work on the farm, and some of the sociocultural norms are there. But at the same time, we also observe these are changing. And here is one of the quote from one of the respondents: "Women can. Why not? Why will they not be able to operate a tractor?" So you might have like seen other outcome stories, other success stories that women are starting to operate tractors and doing the jobs that were not traditionally prescribed to them by their sociocultural context. And there are other quotes you can see. My mother, wife, and sister do weeding and transplanting of paddy. So that is another quote from one of the respondents, showing that women's kind of secondary role in terms of using in the weeding. And after finishing cooking and other work, she helps in weeding activity. So that is kind of in terms of like when you think of this technology design and technology development, this is kind of an interesting insight to think about whether we are targeting to the right clientele or right audience. What are the changes going on? Like women are putting a more effort, and still the technologies are not so much friendly to them, and it is kind of overburdening their task. And if some technologies are too much with one particular social group, then because of demand, cost, and availability, that would impact in some other domains too. So these are some insights we have observed from the field. And talking about this, here are some final remarks that are important to consider if we continue to think of like a gender responsive technology issue with like that should be coupled with the enabling environment for greater extension and advisory services, that is especially to address the knowledge gap that farmers have, that applies to both men and women farmers, of course. And the utilization of time, save time, like weeding is, especially the manual weeding, has been traditionally has been in women's domain. And the main issue we think of is why, like we haven't we're not able to like gain insight on what they do, what is their aspirations, or what they do to save time. But what we can say that given the sociocultural context, the benefit sharing of the saved time might be at stake. So that can be a lessons learned and can be an area to look at more. What will happen to with the saved time? In terms of normalized herbicide use, we found the knowledge gap and I think some programs that are built on the agronomic literacy around the use and management of herbicides for weed management could be an area to empower these farmers and to make them understand what it means of using herbicide within the safe limit in terms of their health and also the environmental issue. And at the same time, the capacity building and extension education without leaving women behind. That will help, that will definitely help to meet these gender aspirations or gender responsive technology development. So these are the couple of insights I presented, and based on this study, we have produced 2 publications. One is actually already submitted to the journal. Other one is in process. This is just a matter of thanking to the colleagues who have put their enormous effort to bring this project come to the end. I'd like to thank you for those who contributed to that one. Even bigger list I have here. Without support from the funder, the Australian Centre for International Agricultural Research, CIMMYT, a big thank to them. And I'd also like to thank our local partners, the colleagues from Uttar Banga Krishi Vishwavidyalaya, UBKB, South Mile Satish Club, Kuch Bihar, Bihar Agricultural University colleagues in Bhagalpur, Nepal Agricultural Research Council colleagues, and Rangpur Dinajpur Rural Service RDRS in Rangpur, Bangladesh. So colleagues from there, you are very much thankful for the great support you provided, and also the team members who had who provided not only who led the process in many instances in terms of designing the project, in terms of designing instruments, collecting data analyzing, and bringing those outputs into the manuscript form. Yes, at this moment, I just would like to spell out their names, like from CIMMYT India, Bhavya, she might be in this call, and other colleagues from CIMMYT Nepal, who some or all of you might be in the call. Brendan Brown, Anjana Chaudhary, Rama Sharma, Manisha Shrestha, Pragya Timsina, Emma Karki, and Akriti Sharma. And from CIMMYT Bangladesh, I'd like to thank Maize Gartaula, and I don't want to forget, or I should not forget, the enumerators, the field workers, and the transcribers, Prasanna, Anup, Shyamal, Mizanur, Monimoi, Prerna, and Sital. Last but not least, the farmer folks, the men and women farmers from the research locations who provided their enormous time and information to bring this project come to this end. I'd like to thank you for your interest, and if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them. If not, we'll explore more. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hom Gartaula. We have several questions in the chat box. We are going to start with Jordan Chamberlain. Are men and women referring to the same fields? And relatedly, are they actively farming the same fields, or is there some division of labor or management, like men's fields against women's fields?
Thank you, Jordan. It's a great question. I think in South Asia, or at least in the field that we are, the information that we are giving, the farmers, they are talking about the same field. There is no man and woman field. There's no such man and woman field that they're not talking about the issues from different field and different crops. Like they went to the field, like husband and wife in most cases, and picked up the weeds from the same fields but in a different time. So there is, yeah. I hope I answered your query. Were there any other question in that one?
Thank you. Yes, there are several questions.
Yeah, please.
Okay, there is Defries Teckle-Wolf. He wrote his question and he's asking for the microphone. Defries, if you would like to open your microphone then to ask your question.
Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation and the insight. I have two questions. One is I'm a little bit confused if a maize farmer cannot able to distinguish whether it is men or women, to distinguish it is a maize crop from the wheat, because your statistics shows that about 88% of the wheats were known by or identified by both women and men, but the remaining, there is a staggering figure like 40% not known by the farmer, the male farmer, and similar equivalent amount by the female farmer. I can accept that for wheat because wheat are confusing with barley, rye, and the other crops, but maize is a very differentiated species, and what is the reason for this? This is the first question. The second question I have is already in the chat box. I would like to know the gender disaggregated data for saying positive and negative aspects of the wheat. Is it the positive and the negative disaggregated by the farmer's gender? Like if something is said positive and by male farmer, or the other said by negative, the same thing said negative by the female farmer. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for these great questions. So first, the identification issue. I agree. Like a maize, it looks quite different than its wheat plants. But if you remember the design of the study, it is from the first the date of sowing to the first 5 weeks. So that might be the issue within the first few weeks, where there is like when they start to germinate, they like made a little bit different, of course, but at the at the early stage of the in the field, in the germination, that might be the case for the identification. And of course, with the wheat, there are lots of other plants that are similar to wheat. But in case of maize, I think the data that would have been because of the first few weeks. Now, if they're already germinated and well identified, that would not be the different issue. In terms of gender disaggregation on the perception, and this one, unfortunately, we don't have the gender disaggregated data on the positive and negative perception around the use of herbicides. So this is so we have not this is not from the male and female farmers. These are the interviewers, and we could look at the details, but at least in this presentation and the study that I mean the manuscript that we have done, this is not like gender identified. It's not gender disaggregated in terms of perception about the herbicide use.
Thank you, Dr. Gartaula. We have another question from ML Jat. Also the druggery for wheat management against fodder preference. Well, you have already covered that one, but he was referring to another question here. In traditional systems with control, hand-weeding intercultural operations was primarily performed by women, but herbicide weed management is dominated by men. So how does women feel about this, and where does the women make use of the time saved by transition from, oh sorry, this is not very friendly, from hand weeding to herbicidal weed management, gender implications of herbicide weed management.
Okay, is that the all question? Yeah, okay, thank you, ML Jad. This is very great question, and there are some indications we found about what are they doing, how they are using the save time, and traditionally, as you mentioned, that weeding, transplanting, those are basically under women's domain. And there are indications that farmers are engaged in some other off-farm activities, mushroom cultivation, and some like seedling factory in the case of, especially in the case of Kuch Bihar. There are indications, and this can be a very good research. Actually, we were trying to do a survey last year, but because of pandemic, we had to cancel. So I wish we'd have completed that survey, and that was actually to investigate more about this like spillover activities of these, the save time, how these farmers, the male farmers, the female farmers are doing with the save time. So that was the plan, but we unfortunately had to cancel as this project ended in December. So that this might be a very good small research, Dr. Jad. Thank you.
And this is a little bit related. Rachel Boss, do you know how household decisions made about herbicide use, whether or not to use, on which crop fields to use, and so forth? Interesting that this is a shift of labor burden for women, from women's manual weeding to men's herbicides application.
Can you please repeat the question? Sorry, I first part.
Yes. Do you know how household decisions made about herbicide use, whether or not to use, on which crop field to use? Interesting that this is a shift of labor burden from women's manual weeding to men's herbicides application. Probably this is more a comment than a question.
Yes, thank you so much. So about in terms of household decision making, we didn't inquire much about like quantifying who makes decision on what aspect. But based on my study, my experience in other field, it depends on the type of household, the household relationship, whether a woman is the head of the household, whether a woman is the like de facto head of the household, whether man or woman, how much they're involved in the agricultural activities. So that depends on several other factors. But in this particular study, we did not quantify how they decide on which specific herbicide or which specific plants they grow. Thank you.
Thank you. There is one more question from Joseph Dayene. Oh, and also, well, I'm sorry. I'm going to read this question, and then I'm going to give the microphone to Gokul Paudel, who raised the hand. Just let me read that question. This question.
Well, I don't have. It's a very nice
Okay, yes.
It's a very nice presentation, but I just want to know, because we have published already a couple of papers in gender. I just want to know, being working here in CIMMYT for more than a decade, what can we do to minimize this gender discrepancies in terms of weeding? We know that in South Asia, a lot of weeds management practice are being controlled or managed by a female. But what we can do to minimize this gender discrepancies in terms of weed management as a broader question? Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Gokul. It's very good question and very tough question, because there are so many things we can do and there are so many things we cannot. One of the basic thing is like we have found that if we have like right technology to the right hands, there are benefits we can achieve, and that will help.
Please provide us example, because we are practical and pragmatic organizers, you know that.
Yeah, one of the examples is that if you look at Podell et al. 2020, that has like with the similar kind of productive resources, if it were given to women, the productivity of maize would raise by about 5% or so. So that is the evidence that can be used to policy influence about capacity building and also for the R&D institutes like CIMMYT to think more on the gender responsive technology development. And gender responsive technology development means, what I mean by that is to think of the farmer folks not as a homogeneous group, but there can be male farmers, female farmers, farmers with the different resource endowments, and with the different access to those resources, different access to knowledge and the extension services. And we have to respond to those aspects and tailor our capacity building packages at one hand, and also the research and design of those technology on the other hand. So I think this is like practically that is a different issue, but we are still, whether we are making sense of developing those technologies that are tailored to the needs of the farmers with the different capacities, with the different access, and with the different resource domain. I think that is what we need to figure out even before going into the pragmatic thinking of.
Thank you. I got it.
Because some practical issues. Yeah.
Thank you. We changed some of the policy interventions in Nepal, especially in farm mechanization, but not right now. As you said, Podell et al. 2020, you were all part of that study. We were being able to change some of the policy intervention, and he was also the major contributor of that paper. We did some intervention in Nepal, and the government, the policy planners, they were able to incorporate some of the gender issues much recently, maybe a couple of months before they were able. My concern is that how we can do by crop management practices like, weeding must be done in, if you go to Bangladesh, most of the activities are done by men. If you come to Nepal, it's been mostly done by women, same as true to India as well. So how to perceive these?
That is why I think.
Yeah, that's my only understanding, that how can we minimize these discrepancies, because these are sometimes derived by political, sometimes religious as well. I can't say more than this as well, being a short communication anyway, but it's good to have your very precise presentation here. Thank you.
Yeah, I think just to comment on that one, I think that's why I indicated earlier that, as you rightly mentioned, in Bangladesh, most of the things are done by men, and mostly they're supervised and mostly done by hired labor. So that has different dynamics. And if you go to Bihar, there are different dynamics. If you go to Nepal or Coast Bihar, and that is the reason why we often say that one size fits all solution doesn't work in this complex and very what is called disaggregated world. Okay, thank you, Gokul. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Hom.
Question. Yeah.
There are some more questions in the chat box, and we have still time, so we will cover them. From Joseph Bayene, you mentioned there was considerable time saving due to conservation tillage compared to conventional practice. What about the total cost between the two systems?
Thank you. Thank you so much, Joseph. I think we did not do the cost benefit analysis, and that can be a great research question in itself. Thank you.
Thank you. From Kai Sander, what's the probability of legal issues with herbicide use in this system in the future? Like here in Mexico, where glyphosate was banned, and which will make conservation agriculture systems more complicated.
Okay, thank you, Kai.
And can I interrupt you here, please, just to answer for the glyphosate issue?
Okay, go ahead. That will help me.
Sorry, because the thing is that is an interrelated question, because we work for the pursuit that's been prescribed by the USAID. So it depends on how our USAID norms, suggest us to follow. For example, in Nepal, we are not being allowed to use the pendimethalin or the Roundup, whatever the herbicide you said. It depends on the donor's interest. So it should be site specific, same as true for other countries. So I think Dr. Hom need not to answer for these questions. It should be dependent on the donor's funding nature that we implement.
Okay, thank you, Gokul. I just would want to make comment on that one, that the Kai's question about the legal issues and sometimes like the government interventions with use or not to use, those kind of things. And I think you have very valid point on, especially in a situation where the herbicide is becoming more normalized, and it is kind of a precursor for the success of zero tillage practice. I think it is important to consider or take as a risk from the legal point of view, whether they can continue using those specific crops. At the same time, there are other environmental concerns of haphazard use or uncontrolled use of those things. I think those are valid points, but and as Gokul also mentioned, these are the dynamism based on different context and different issues, including like the donor and policy concerns. So I may not have a clear answer to that, Kai. Thank you.
Yeah, Kai, one more thing is that we can't use any herbicide, pesticide, whatever, if not donor prescribe that. We are in a horrible situation. Even we know that, for example, nobody gold in rice can control the, so many weeds, but we can't use that here in Nepal because we have been following donors protocol. Hope you understood that situation, that we are following the donors protocol.
Thank you. Okay, so we will continue with the rest of the questions. From Vijesh Krishna, any evidence on the negative impact on herbicide use by farmers on the livelihood of labor providing households in the village?
This is, thank you, Vijesh. This is a great question around the livelihood issues with the labor, and especially for those who depend on wage labor, and their livelihood depends on like manual wage labor and those things. And if we remove or if we take control of that, what will happen? This is a great question. And as I mentioned, like we wanted to see about what is happening. And this is more of the benefit we are talking about is from the perspective of farmers who are using or who are about to use this zero tillage technology. And it is from the farmer's perspective. I think if we think of the wage labor perspective, the scenario might be different, but I think that can be, and we should not just continue to think from that farmer's perspective, time saving and other things, but at the same time, there is a huge bulk of labor that depend, especially in the rural part of India and Nepal, that depend on the wage labor. I think we need to think about to what extent these technologies impact in their livelihoods and what would be the alternative measures for that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Hom, can I add something here to Videsh's question?
Sure, Bhavya.
Yeah, so the thing is, while it's true, we haven't been able to conduct further studies, even FGDs due to COVID-19, which would have covered a lot of these aspects as follow-up questions. Farmers did share how labor shortage was a massive problem, how manual weeding is becoming difficult because there are no labor available, and how herbicides are also much, much cheaper, as well as much more available than labor. So this is what I wanted to add. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Bhavya.
Thank you. So we are going to read the one more question from Gideon Cruzman. Did you consider the differences in decision-making by men and women in terms of strategic long-term decision-making, tactical decision-making over the whole cropping season, and operational decision-making within the season?
Thank you, Gideon. I think the similar question was from other colleague about the household decision-making process. We didn't really quantify or at least frame this research in terms of like a practical and strategic decision-making process in terms of how they decide different crops and different pests. I think that can be a very that can be a study and like an interesting study in itself. So we in this one we did not much cover onto that one. So it is from the user and from the user perspective and their experience with the use of zero tillage technology and the herbicide use. Thank you, Gideon.
Thank you so much. So we have already missed the deadline for our time. So thank you, Dr. Hom Gartaula. I'm sorry, I do not pronounce your last name. Thank you so much for this interesting seminar on gender dynamics of wheat management under conservation agriculture, insights from the Eastern Indo-Gangetic plains of South Asia. Thank you very much to all the audience and participants for their questions. And the seminar will be posted in a CIMMYT webcast, so you can share it, you can visit, you can view the seminar again. And you can contact also directly Dr. Hom Gartaula directly if you have any further questions or if you would like to have any further discussion with him. Thank you, sir, and thank you very much, Dr. Hom.
Okay, thanks everyone. Thanks for attending this seminar. It was a good 1 hour, and I just would like to thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you. So thank you and take well.
Bye.
Take care. Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Well, thank you. Bye.